Okay, so this time we're doing the year of sorrow. Okay, does anyone know anything about the year of sorrow, about what that is in the Seerah of the Prophet?
Didn't he had like three like prominent family members pass away or something like that?
Well, there are two main ones that we're focusing on, which are, do you know? You probably know one of them.
His uncle,
his uncle, and his wife Khadija. And his uncle was who?
Abu Talib.
Abu Talib, exactly. Now Abu Talib, that specifically is one that's very important because his uncle Abu Talib was the one who's protecting him in Mecca. He was his protection basically. Like, you know, if you're in Los Angeles and you're in a gang and you walk through a street you're not supposed to, if you have somebody that protects you, you're fine. You can walk through that. It was kind of like this. You would have a tribe in Mecca, and if you had protection, that tribe will protect you. So Abu Talib was in the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ, and he was a chieftain of this tribe. So he was protecting him and making sure that nobody would kill him, as he was a Muslim and he was making waves, and a lot of people did not like him. He was his main protection. All of a sudden, he died. But so we're going to talk a little bit about first how he died, what happened at least leading up to when he died. So first of all, like Ibrahim, like you said, the year of sorrow is basically when we had two big deaths happen in the Prophet's life. It's Abu Talib and his wife Khadija. They both happened within not a year, but within 40 days. So within 40 days, he lost his wife. 40 days, he lost his wife that he was married to for about 25 years, and he lost his uncle that was his main protection, and also someone that he loved very, very dearly as a family member. And this led to the year of sorrow because it took about a year of grieving because a lot of trials as well were happening. So we call it the year of sorrow. So inshallah, we're going to try to keep this a little short because it really is just 1 year we're talking about. But talking about the death of Abu Talib first, we're going to talk about, we know that there was a Muslim boycott, as was discussed by Yunus al-Mahdi. There was a boycott of Muslims. Now, less than 6 weeks after this boycott ended, Abu Talib died. Right? At his deathbed, the Prophet ﷺ asked him, "Oh uncle, just say just one statement." This is what statement. Anybody know what that is?
Yeah.
La ilaha illallah, right? There's no God except Allah. He was begging him to just say the Shahada, so he dies what? A Muslim. Because he knows, he's the Prophet, he knows about being a Muslim, how it is to die as a non-Muslim, how it is to die as a Muslim. He does not want his uncle that he loves a lot to end up in hellfire. And so he said, yeah, just say one statement that I can use to argue your case in front of Allah to save you. He wanted to basically like argue in his favor for Allah to be able to save him from the hellfire. Abu Talib was very close to saying it. He was very close to converting to Islam. Very, very close. But then what happened? Abu Jahl and Abdullah ibn Abi Umayyah said, they went through it. They said, are you really going to leave the religion of Abdul Muttalib? So whenever he'd be close to doing the Shahada, Abu Talib, somebody would come back. These guys would come and say, look, are you really going to leave the religion of Abdul Muttalib? So in this case, we have a situation where the Abu Talib, he knows that Islam is the truth. He's very close to converting. But when he remembers that the religion of his fathers, and like his position in terms of his tribe and his where he is, and basically his people, he leaves it and said, okay, I'm not going to be Muslim. Not going to be Muslim. Now he's on his deathbed and he's getting told by these two people who do not want him to become Muslim the same thing. Are you going to leave the religion of Abdul Muttalib? And he didn't listen. He said, "Khalas, you're right, actually. I'm not going to leave the religion of Abdul Muttalib." So he's very close. They asked the question, and then Abu Talib, he loved the Prophet more than anything. But the one person that was more beloved to him was who? His father. His father was more beloved to him than the Prophet. So whenever this would be mentioned, he would, "Khalas, I'm not going to be Muslim. Not going to be Muslim." And now on his deathbed, okay, I'm not going to be Muslim. Because like we know, Abu Talib, he was the son of the most respected, revered, honored person of the previous generation. Like the reputation was at its height here, And he knew the truth of Islam down in his heart. But like I said, the prestige of his lineage was gripped to his heart to the point where he ended up passing away. Khalas. He passed away to the moment he did not utter the testimony of faith of La ilaha illallah. So he died non-Muslim, and we know what happens to non-Muslims when they die. They do not accept Islam after knowing the truth. He he's going to go to Nar now, right? He's going to go to hell. So the Prophet ﷺ was very overwhelmed by his death. So he even said, "I will ask Allah to forgive you unless I am prohibited." And of course, we know that no prophet can take a step forward in the preaching without the permission of Allah. And at this point, the Prophet ﷺ was so overcome with emotion that he acted and waited for Allah's approval rather than first waiting for Allah's approval then acting. And he continued to ask Allah for his forgiveness until Allah sent down a multitude of verses, sent down some verses to the Prophet ﷺ. One of them was from Surah At-Tawbah. For the sake of time, I'll just say it in English, where Allah basically told him, it is not proper for the Prophet and the believers to ask for forgiveness for the polytheists, even if they were close relatives, after it has become clear to the believers that they are bound for the hellfire. So this is something for us to remember, even if you have your parents are kuffar, basically. Inshallah, that's not the case for any of us or anyone that we know. But if your parents are kuffar and maybe they're polytheists, maybe whatever, you do not, and they died this way, you don't ask for forgiveness for them. It's done, khalas. You know where they're going, they know where they're going, it's done. But it's very tempting to want to, ask for Allah to forgive them and stuff. But we even know, like the Prophet and the believers, it's not proper for any of us to ask for forgiveness for the polytheists. So this is something we have to remember as a small lesson in this part of the seerah. Al-Abbas, who was the brother of Abu Talib, he asked the Prophet, "O Messenger of Allah, have you benefited your uncle at all? He used to protect you and become angry on your behalf." So basically, Abu Talib died, and he protected Abu Talib. Abu Talib protected. Oh, if you're going to pray, go ahead. Okay. He basically protected the Prophet, and he'd basically get angry defending the Prophet. And now after he died, his brother's coming to the Prophet and saying, "Have you helped him at all? Have you benefited him at all? He basically is dead now, and he did all this for you. But what have you done for him?" The Prophet replied, "Yes, I have. He is on the peripheries of the fire of hell, and were it not for me, he would be in the depths of hell." So just because Abu Talib did not convert to Islam does not mean he did not get anything out of helping the Prophet, right? Now instead of being in the depths of hell fire, it's now like he's on the peripheries. He's like he's not having the deepest punishment, but he's still in hell nevertheless, which is a very terrible punishment. The Prophet also said that the person with the least punishment of all eternal inhabitants of hell is who? It's Abu Talib. So a lot of people are going to be going to hell. We know many people are going to go, but the one who have the least punishment is Abu Talib, because his goodness, Allah did not prevent him from becoming Muslim, and because of the pride that he had and arrogance he had of being Abdul Muttalib's heir, basically. It was kind of good and evil intertwined in a single soul, but he did help, and for that he is going to be going to hell, but he's not going to be going to the depths of hell. It's still a bad punishment. So some people kind of reflect on this, and they read the seerah or listen to the seerah, and they realize Abu Talib, he did so much for Islam. He did so much for the Prophet, he protected him, did a lot, but he's still going to hell. And they're thinking like, he was so good at all this, he's going to hell. And it reminds us of one thing. First of all, some people think that the Prophet, that Abu Talib actually converted to Islam before he died because of all the good things he did. It's not true. This is completely historically inaccurate. Because it's very clear that he did not die Muslim, and our acceptance of this fact is rooted in our inherent belief in Allah as our only God here. But like I said, this case of Abu Talib reaffirms our belief in Allah's supreme decree. Why is this? Because despite being the most beloved person to the Prophet, he still died non-Muslim. The Prophet could not guide him. So, for example, if you're applying to a big company, a tech company, maybe you're applying to Apple or Amazon or Google or something, and your friend, very the most beloved person to you, to the manager who's hiring, is you. You're like, khalas, is guaranteed, I'm going to get the job very easily. This is not like this at all. The most beloved person to the Prophet ﷺ was Abu Talib, but he still could not bring him into Islam. He did his very best. He was very close. Very close. He could not bring him in. And you see it in library walk. I remember one time on the Islamic Awareness Week, I was on the dawah after library walk ended, and there's a guy who used to be Muslim, and he left Islam. He was from Tunisia or something. He left Islam completely. And I talked to this guy 1.5 hours because he knows about Islam and he knows the message. I'm trying, very close. No matter what, nothing. Did not convert to Islam. He did not, he still remains a non-Muslim. Why is this? Because Allah does not want somebody to be guided. He will not be guided. If He wants someone to be guided, He will be guided. So there are people who completely criminals, all kinds of things that you will expect them not to be Muslim. And Allah wants to guide them, they're guided to Islam. But then we can have people who are very close, who know a lot, who believe a lot, but they don't become Muslim because Allah does not want to be Muslim. So that's something you have to remember, especially with Islamic Awareness Week coming in a couple of months. It's a little bit early, but still it's a good reminder to have. So yeah, as for the wisdoms of Abu Talib's fate, we know that the Quraysh, he had a very good position, he was a chieftain, so that we know that he protected the Prophet ﷺ, and actually if he did become Muslim, he would have lost his position, and this would have kind of affected things in terms of like if he had become Muslim, he may have lost his position, so then he may not have been able to protect the Prophet ﷺ. So there was a wisdom that Allah has in terms of him not becoming Muslim. But of course, Abu Talib's words were final, and the Quraysh never undermined his authority during his life until he died. Once he died, you'll be surprised what might happen. So First, let me make sure that this book includes what I'm going to say. If not, it's okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna mention something. There's Abu Lahab. We know the Quran, Tabbat yada Abi Lahabin wa tab, ma aghna anhu maluhu wa ma kasab. He's a big enemy of Islam. He's called out in the Quran. There's a whole surah about him and how basically like this guy he's cooked. He has khalas, big enemy of Islam. But to the surprise, the Prophet ﷺ, he actually was willing to help him. So I want to make sure it's in the book just so I don't make any mistakes. Yes. So so Abu Talib died. Abu Lahab became the chieftain of the tribe. Okay, as we know. And after Abu Talib's like he became the leader. Abu Lahab, they were like they had to basically, or sorry, Abu Talib, because of him, they had to protect the Prophet. Now Abu Lahab comes in, and he said, "Oh Muhammad, be as you were under Abu Talib." So basically, he's saying to the Prophet ﷺ, "You have my protection." So this is a big surprise because you have one of the biggest enemies of Islam telling the Prophet ﷺ, "You have my protection." He changes his stance basically, and then there becomes rumors that spread that Abu Lahab has accepted Islam. And of course, Abu Lahab said, "No, actually, I'm protecting my flock. Like, I'm just protecting my people, basically." So then Abu Jahl and Utbah said they had like a plot, they had an idea to change Abu Lahab's mind. So then they said, "Okay, look, Abu Lahab, why don't you go ask your nephew about the fate of your father, Abdul Muttalib?" So Abu Lahab went to the Prophet ﷺ, and he asked him what the fate of his father was. The Prophet said, "He is with his people." So the Prophet's response was very wise. He did not say he's hell, he's bottom of this, he's gonna be going through this and this and this. He just very wise response. He said he's with his people. Abu Lahab was okay, cool, whatever, that's fine. It was generic enough to suffice Abu Lahab without lying. He did not lie. But then when Abu Lahab went back to Abu Jahl, he told him, "Look, you fool, where are his people except in the fire of hell?" So Abu Lahab was so mad when he found out, wait a minute, you just said that my father's going to hell. He was so enraged that the idea was successful, and he revoked his protection from the Prophet ﷺ, and then the Prophet was once again left exposed, and he could only rely on the protection of Allah, because now his protection is gone, completely gone. Before moving on to talk about Ta'if, I also want to mention the death of Khadija, his wife. So just 1 month after Abu Talib's death, the Prophet ﷺ had another calamity that happened, which is Khadija dying. Okay, he personally shrouded her, he personally buried her, and it took a very, very big toll on him. The trauma was, now he has trauma from losing his internal protection, which was his wife, and now he lost his external protection, which was Abu Talib. So, the thing about his internal protection, he actually loved Khadija very much. Over 20 years they were married. He had a very, very deep love for her. And, he would buy her friends, even after she died, he'd buy her friends gifts and talk about her with the deepest admiration. And there's actually even, we know that in Aisha, for example, she was married to the Prophet ﷺ after Khadija died. She was still jealous of him, of her. He was still jealous of Khadija. Until even one time, the Prophet ﷺ, he was in his house, and Khadija's sister knocked on the door, and the Prophet was almost asleep. When he heard her voice, he jumped up in happiness simply to meet Khadija's relative. Khadija's already dead; he loves her very much, but her sister came, and that made him very, very happy. Till Aisha said, "Ya Rasulullah, for how long are you going to keep on remembering an old toothless hag of the Quraysh when Allah has replaced her with someone better?" Now you have to understand, Aisha, of course, she did not, she would say things because it's sometimes you say something on impulse and you just out of emotion and all that, because she was jealous of Khadija. She was already dead, and he's still getting very happy over her and over her family and all that. So in a rare occurrence, the Prophet ﷺ, he was very angry. He said, "No, by Allah, Allah did not give me someone better. She supported me when no one else supported me. She spent on me when everyone boycotted me. She confronted me when the whole world gave me grief, and Allah gave me children through her when Allah deprived all my other wives of this blessing." And when narrating this hadith, Aisha said, "After that day, I never once opened my mouth on Khadija again, about Khadija again." So this just shows this little example of how much he loved the wife that ended up passing away in this time of life, in this time of year of sorrow. So anyways, going back to the loss of protection. He lost the protection, the Prophet. So then he went to this city that's very close to Mecca. Does anybody know what it's called? It's a very historical part of the Seerah. Ta'if. Ta'if, exactly. So he went without protection to Ta'if. and he was looking for sustainable options. And he went there, and it shows that like he didn't want to do this for many years. Like he stayed in Mecca through all the tribulations and trials he went through. He stayed in Mecca because he's just very patient, and it shows perseverance as well. So from that we can learn a lesson of perseverance and patience in Islam, right? You don't have to escape right away. You just try it out. This is the last resort. Then you want to go. So then, as you can see, like he even took inspiration from the prophets before him, right? Sayyidina Nuh, for example, he gave dawah to his people for 950 years. However, without protection, the prophet's life was in imminent danger, so he had to go and leave. Right? He had to go to Dawah. So that was the most prominent city next to Mecca. And at this time, the people of Ta'if were very aware of the people of Mecca and vice versa, right? So it was a very ideal because it was close to Mecca, and it's a good base for the prophet to explore. So he took his son Zayd, or not his son, but his adopted son, Zayd ibn Haritha, and they went quietly, secretly to Ta'if on foot, not to arouse suspicion. So they tried to convert first people who were in charge, basically, right? They walked for 2 days. When they met with the leaders, it was 3 brothers who ruled it, and all of them were kind of against it. One of them said, if Allah chose you to be a prophet, then I might as well tear down the curtains of the Kaaba. The other one said, has Allah not found anyone better than you? Then the third one said, I cannot speak to you because if you really are a prophet, you are too holy for me. And if you're a liar, then you are too beneath me to deserve a response. So they were all insulted by Bob. But the Prophet he remained dignified, and he responded very well. If you have rejected my method, then at least do not inform the Quraysh of my visit. I know the Prophet continued to cover his tracks. And usually like you're trying to target people on the top, right? You target the leaders. If that doesn't work, then you go to the people, because the leaders kind of control things, like take care of things. So he remained there for another week, spreading this message to the common folk. And at some point, basically they started getting physically attacked after all this, right? Zayd tried to protect him, but they were both bloodied and bruised from head to toe, so they had to escape Ta'if, right? They escaped Ta'if. They eventually went under a tree for shade and relaxed, basically, respite. So then, basically what happened, they were sitting under this tree, and actually they did not know something, so let me just make sure I say it correctly. Yes. So, anyways, they sat down for shade. They did not realize that the land belonged to Quraysh, who are basically, they are not being protected by it. So basically, 2 Qurayshi uncles of the Prophet ﷺ, Utbah and Shayba ibn Rabi'a, they witnessed his brutal expulsion from Ta'if, and they felt bad, even though they're not supposed to protect him. They said they felt bad. Okay, he's they gave him some fruits from the orchards, and then they sent their servant Ades was an Iraqi Christian, basically. They sent him with some grapes. And then the Prophet ﷺ accepted the gift and said Bismillah before eating. It's something you have to do, by the way, as a reminder. Try to say Bismillah before you eat. So Ades, the guy, he was a Christian from Iraq, he said, what is this phrase? What did you just say, basically? Because the Prophet said Bismillah. The Prophet ﷺ replied, this is something that my Lord has taught me. Where are you from, O Ades? So now he's asking Ades, where are you from? Because he's very intrigued by this Bismillah. What is Bismillah? Bismillah. So Ades said, I'm from modern-day Iraq. Okay. Prophet ﷺ smiled and said, from the city of Yunus ibn Matta, which is Jonas, the son of Matthew. Ades was stunned because he was like, how do you know Yunus? How do you know the Jonas, the son of Matthew? How do you know this? And then Ades, he was like a lone Christian in these lands. Like he was surrounded by pagans and people who had no knowledge of his lineage, the prophetic lineage of the Yunus. The Prophet ﷺ said, how could I not know Yunus? He is my brother. We are both prophets of Allah. As soon as the Prophet uttered this statement, Ades immediately started kissing the feet of the Prophet. And his 2 masters from the Quraysh, they were saying, like they looked from afar, like they were astonished, like flabbergasted, right? They're like, why are you kissing his hands and feet? And Ades said, oh, my masters, there is no one on earth better than him, for he told me things only a prophet could know. His masters, like they respond dismissively. They're like, oh, Ades, he bewitched you from your religion. Your religion is better than his. And then later on, when the Battle of Badr happened, Ades was asked to fight against the Muslims. When he said, you want me to fight that man who was sitting under the tree? By Allah, the mountains could not harm him. And then he refused his master's command, and they both ended up meeting their death in the Battle of Badr. So even the Prophet ﷺ, he described the following events. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a cloud to protect me and offer me shade. Jibreel was in that cloud, saying, "O Muhammad, your Lord has heard what your people have said to you and the rejection of you. He has sent me with the angel of the mountains to be at your disposal and do as you please." I then heard another voice. "I am the angel of the mountains. Peace be upon you, O Muhammad. Say as you wish. I am at your disposal if you want. I can crush this city between the two mountains. These two mountains?" I replied, "No. Rather, I hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will extract from their progeny those who will worship Him without associating partners with Him." So what happened here? Basically, the Prophet ﷺ had the opportunity to get revenge on the city that basically rejected him and treated him terribly, because the angel of the mountains could have destroyed them very easily, and he was being very merciful. He said, "No, I'm not going to do it." He decided, "I'm not going to take revenge. It's okay." It kind of shows the prophetic mercy that we have. The Prophet ﷺ, we know that he was mercy for the whole world. You know, even about we know that it's been said. You know, we have not sent you except as a mercy for the world. So he did not destroy Ta'if. Ta'if was eventually conquered later on, and a lot of these guys who were around, they ended up becoming Muslims. So it's actually, in the long run, better that he ended up not even destroying them, because a lot of them ended up becoming Muslim, and like there's a lot of good deeds on him, inshallah, right? So briefly now I'm going to talk about a meeting with the jinn. So on the way back to Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ camped in a small desert grove in the valley of Nakhl. So as like a long habit that he has, he did tahajjud, right? The night prayers. And he did not yet wash his body or his clothes with the dried blood, but he maintained his priority by worshipping Allah. And a miracle then ensued where the Prophet, that was narrated by Allah in Surah Al-Ahqaf, where it says, I'll read in English, "Remember, O Prophet, when we sent a group of jinn your way to listen to the Quran. Then upon hearing it, they said to one another, 'Listen quietly.' Then when it was over, they returned to their fellow jinn as warners." So Allah is making it clear to the Prophet that this is no coincidence. Rather, He subhanahu wa ta'ala planned for their paths to cross. He planned for the jinn and the Prophet for their paths to cross. The Prophet's prayer was for hours and hours and hours. It was tahajjud, it was night prayers, but he did it for hours, right? Meaning that for hours the jinn were doing what? They were listening to the Quran and they were hearing it. They were understanding it, right? And Ahqaf always says, also says, they, the jinn, declared, "O fellow jinn, we have truly heard a scripture revealed after Prophet Musa, confirming what came before it. It guides to the truth and the straight path. O fellow jinn, respond to the caller of Allah and the caller of Allah and believe in Him. He will forgive your sins and protect you from a painful punishment." Allah's symbolism here, it kind of like it continues, right? We see that not only will the Iraqi Christian just convert and accept the message, but also nations from a completely different species, the jinn, it also speaks to them, the message. So anyways, we mentioned this was on the way to Mecca. He ends up going to Mecca and he needs to have protection again, right? So anyways, he physically leaves for 10 days. And you know, we know that he is tied to Quraysh, are all severed anyways. And Zayd even asked, "Ya Rasulullah, how will we enter Mecca after you are expelled?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "O Zayd, Allah will make a way out for us, and Allah will help His Prophet and make His message supreme." So after doing all he could, he had nothing else to rely on except for what? He just had to rely on Allah. There's nothing else. At some point, you exhaust all your resources, you do your best, you do everything you can. At some point, all you can do left is rely on Allah. That's it. So that's what the Prophet ﷺ did. He began to send emissaries to some of his allies in Mecca, in hopes of protection. And eventually, he sent a message to one person who was the chieftain of the Banu Nawfal sub-tribe, which is the same man who broke the boycott and sent aid to the exiled Muslims. So there was a boycott basically against them. So anyways, he sent a message back to the Prophet ﷺ, and he sent his 4 sons, instructing them, "Put your armor on and escort Muhammad back to me." And then he stood in front of the Kaaba and said, "O people of Mecca, I have given my protection to Muhammad." Abu Sufyan stood up and said, "Are you his follower or are you just giving him protection?" And he said, "I'm not his follower, I'm just giving protection." So then everyone's okay. In that case, we accept. So khalas. They end up accepting this, and the Prophet he returns to Mecca safely. Alhamdulillah, now he has protection once again. So we're going to wrap up this section. Very almost over, guys, don't worry. First, we're going to talk about the Prophet's marriage to Sauda. Does anybody know who Sauda is? Any background about her? No? Okay. Anyways, this is the wife that he had, the first wife he had after Khadija. Okay. So after Khadija died, Prophet ﷺ was carrying how many kids? 3 daughters, and he needed to remarry. He had 3 daughters to take care of, and he's the Prophet of Islam. Like, it's a very big obligation. He has 3 daughters and needs someone to help take care of them. So one day, Khawla bint Hakim visited the Prophet of Islam and said, "O Messenger of Allah, you appear to be withdrawn due to grieving the death of Khadijah." And the Prophet of Islam said, "Yes, she was the mother of my children and the caretaker of my house." Then after testing the waters, like she's testing out, seeing what's going on, how he feels and all that, Khawla says, "Should I then not make a proposal?" The Prophet he asked, "Who do you have in mind? Who do you have in mind for me to marry?" She said, "If you want an unmarried lady, Aisha is ideal. If you want a widowed lady, Sauda is ideal." So at the time, Aisha was too young for marriage. So the Prophet he gave her the permission to approach Sauda and kind of gauge her interest to see. And then she ended up approving, her father approved, and then the Prophet married her, Sauda bint Zama. Okay? Now we're gonna get to the other marriage that happened after this, right? Right. You know, one of the most a lot of the hadiths are narrated by her, or we have a lot of the hadiths that we have. So it's very important to kind of know how that started, right? We know that at first he didn't marry her because she was too young, and of course we know that his marriage to Aisha, it's one of the 2 marriages that are commanded by Allah. 2 of the Prophet's marriages were commanded by Allah, and one of them was Aisha. She narrated that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "I saw you in a dream twice. Someone was carrying you in a silk cloth and said, 'This will be your wife.' When I lifted the cloth, I saw you. I said to myself, if this is from Allah, it will come to pass." So this is the Prophet basically getting a message in a dream. And then the dreams from prophets, we know the revelations, right? So like the Prophet like seeing Aisha in his dream was a command from Allah. So the Prophet, after the death of Khadijah, he saw the dream, but he did not immediately act on it because he knew that it would be decreed over time. When Khawla bint Hakim visited the Prophet, suggested both Sauda and Aisha. First, she approached Sauda and her family. Later, she also approached Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, right? Abu Bakr, which is the Prophet's close friend, and of course his wife, who were these are the parents of Aisha. So they were very happy with the news, and Abu Bakr at first was a little confused because the Prophet would usually refer to Abu Bakr as his brother, and Abu Bakr understood that the rules of kinship would apply to him, right? But the Prophet ﷺ explained that they were brothers in Islam, and Abu Bakr was pleased at the end of the day to know that the Prophet was interested in his daughter, ﷺ. So they presented the marriage contract, but they did not consummate the marriage for 3 years. But eventually, Aisha and Muhammad ﷺ, they were married and they had a good marriage. And yeah, that's the end of the chapter. Inshallah, next week, which is week 10 for us, we will be going over Isra wal Araj, which is the night journey and ascension. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.